I got into HR like a lot of people by accident. My career started in strategy, um, and then I was broke. And somebody said to me, "You can make a lot of money in recruitment."
Right.
So I went into agency recruitment. I hated it. I really liked the HR world. I liked what HR is supposed to be doing, um, and I like connecting with people. My passion is about unlocking potential, right? I am a absolute believer and have been for a long time that people have incredible potential. And there are plenty of people, sadly, more people than not, will put you down, will tell you you're not good enough, that you can't do this, that no, that's a step too far for you, that you'll never become this. Oh, no, you're a bit too much of a dreamer. Whatever you want, if you do the right things, if you're willing to put in the right work, if you're going to make the sacrifices that are needed, you can. Success doesn't live within the comfort zone. Success lives outside. Change lives outside.
Outside the comfort zone.
Progress lives outside the comfort zone.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to yet another episode of The Learning Curve by Snapart Global. We are coming to you from the wonderful Liquid Spaces at One Golf Ace Tower. And today I have with me global HR leader, empowerment advocate, eternal optimist, always the red pill. And this is how he wanted me to introduce him. Mr. Taz Rajabali. Welcome to the show, Taz.
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Fantastic. How are you?
Very well, very well. Thank you for having me.
Get into your journey, how it's been and how you've become this global HR leader,
Let's see, I got into HR like a lot of people by accident.
Right.
My career started in strategy, and then I was broke. And somebody said to me, "You can make a lot of money in recruitment."
Right.
So I went into agency recruitment. I hated it.
Okay.
But
Right.
since that, I left after a very short period of time and then carved my way. I really liked the HR world. I liked what HR is supposed to be doing, and I like connecting with people. And over the years, I've just been working and chipping away at honing my own skills, doing my little bit to contribute. And that's where we are today, I guess.
Right.
Doing as much as I can to contribute as much as I can. I still love HR.
Right.
I still think it's a critically important function within an organization. I still think there is huge scope for improvement around the world. And I think there are pockets of absolute brilliance in HR around the world as well. So, we're on the right path. HR is, I think, one of those functions that has a lot to deal with. We're dealing with people.
Right.
And
of course.
people are beautifully, uniquely, wonderfully complex and unreliable and passionate and emotional and constantly in change, constantly in flux. And HR are the lucky ones who get to deal with that on a day-to-day basis.
Of course.
And so hugely important as a function, a lot of responsibility and a lot of opportunity to have very good impact. And I think that's why I like it, because you can do a lot of good in HR, a lot of good.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Okay. So right. Okay. So it's the human element that I think you
Well,
find.
it's the H in HR, I think, right?
Putting the H in HR right
Putting
there.
the H in HR.
Right.
yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you are also a facilitator and a keynote speaker, right? What do you think is the most enjoyable and rewarding aspect of being a keynote speaker or a facilitator? Is it the same thing, enjoyable and rewarding, or are they two different things?
I think speakers have their secret ways of getting enjoyment.
Right.
Sometimes it's at the cost of the audience, right? So I'm not going to give away any of those secrets. Rewarding, hugely rewarding. For me, my passion is about unlocking potential, right? I am a absolute believer and have been for a long time that people have incredible potential.
Right.
And for some reason, I see around the world, a lot of people hold themselves back. For whatever reasons, and I'm not saying any of those reasons are invalid, but I see people holding themselves back from achieving what they really can.
Okay.
And my passion is really about helping people unlock that potential, whether it's at an individual level, whether it's at a team level, whether it's as a manager within an organization, whether it's as a leader within an organization, whether it's at an organizational level. why we exist, why Melius Consulting exists, is really to help unlock that potential.
Right.
And being a facilitator and a speaker allows me an audience to do that. So it's part of why I love it, is because it gives me an opportunity to really fulfill why I exist. I'm actually quite shy as a person. So
Right.
I don't really
I could never tell.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I don't really like spotlight. I don't really like the attention.
Right.
That's not what gets me out of bed in the morning.
Right.
And actually, even things like this, I find very weird, right? Like, why would you want to do a podcast with me? Is my natural thought, right?
Right.
And when I'm away from work, I'm a bit of a recluse,
Mm.
right? I keep myself to myself. I'm, not out there. I don't do social media, as you already know.
Right.
So I'm quite shy as a person, and all of the psychology tests or the personality tests that I've taken over the years, I always come out as a strong introvert, right? Which, when people know me, they find that very weird, but I actually find it very understandable.
Right.
So it's not about being in the front of a stage. It's not about all eyes on me. It's not about everybody listening to me. It's actually about, this is an opportunity for me to help where I can.
Right. So it's a means to an end.
It's absolutely a means to serve my purpose.
Right.
And if I can help people by being positive, being optimistic, I naturally am anyway. It's not a
Right.
show, right? But if somebody can leave my sessions feeling like, actually there is a chance, actually I can do a bit more, actually there is hope, then I go to bed very happy at night.
Right. Okay.
So that's why I really love doing it.
Right. Okay. All right.
It's
Fantastic.
an opportunity to inspire. There are plenty of reasons in the world why we can feel down, right? Plenty of reasons why we can think everything's a bit crap, everything's a bit shit. There are plenty of people. Sadly, more people than not will put you down.
Oh,
Will
yeah.
tell you you're not good enough.
Oh, yeah.
That you can't do this. That no, that's a step too far for you.
Mm-hmm.
That you'll never become this. Oh no, you're a bit too much of a dreamer. There are more people like that in the world than there are people who will tell you, actually, whatever you want,
Yeah.
if you do the right things, if you're willing to put in the right work, if you're going to make the sacrifices that are needed, you can. It's up to you. You can,
Right.
right? So there are too few people like that. I choose to be that.
All right then. Yeah. Like you mentioned, you are the CEO of Melius Consulting, and that's one of the many hats that you wear, right?
Yeah.
In addition to being a facilitator, keynote speaker, a director, an empowerment advocate, a mixologist even,
Yeah.
right? The question is that across all these roles, do you think you've identified a common thread that's helped you with your drive in pursuing excellence
Yeah.
in each of these roles?
Yeah, and it may sound cliche, but it's very, very true. It's
Go for it.
Connecting with people. It's as simple as that.
Right.
When I had a bar, right?
Yeah.
And so I learned how to make cocktails, and then I had a bar.
Right.
And the thing that set that bar aside from everything else, right, was the experience we gave to our customers. Look, you can go to a bar, right? And
Yeah.
you can have great drinks. But if you have a rubbish experience, you're never going to go back to that bar.
Absolutely.
You can go to a different bar and have average drinks. But if the experience blows you away,
Yeah.
you're going to go back to that bar.
Yeah.
It's always about the human connection. And that's the common thread. For me, even with Melius Consulting, the reason I set up the business was to help individuals and to help organizations unlock that potential through people, right? Individual or organizations through people.
Right.
It's always about the people.
Always about the people.
Yeah.
Right.
And for me, that's the common thread. In the bar, it was about people. When it's facilitating, it's about engaging with the audience and giving something that they value. A lot of people have said to me while I've been here running programs, how did it go? And I always say, it doesn't matter what I think. It's irrelevant what I think. It only matters what the audience think.
All right.
Did they get anything from it? And if they did, then it went well for me. If they didn't, I need to do more work, right? I need to
Right.
become better.
Right.
So it's always, the common thread for me is always around what's the most incredible experience you can deliver at a human level. And that applies at organization level as well, because let's not forget, organizations are made up of people, right?
Yeah.
You can have the most well-designed process in the world, but if the people running that process aren't bought in, your process isn't worth anything.
Mm-hmm.
You can have the fanciest technology in the world, but if your operators of that technology or the users are not using it, if they don't want it,
Right.
then throw it away. It's not worth anything, right? It always comes back to people. So for me, everything that I've done in my career and everything I stand for and continue to do is always around the people side, is around consider the human angle of everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you are finding in an organization people are resistant to change,
Mm-hmm.
right? Understand from a human point of view why they're resistant to change, right? It's not because they're bad people,
Yeah.
right? If you find a lot of the companies that I consult with around the world, you know, they'll say to me, "Oh, the leaders, they want to hold on to power," right? It's not necessarily because they're egomaniacs and they just want to hold on to power. Sometimes letting go of power is very frightening for people,
Yeah.
right? Again, it comes down to the human angle. Yeah. When we talk about hiring, for example, right, recruitment, you see a lot of organizations, they use very standard terminology. It all blurs into one another, right? Disconnected from what people are wanting. We talk about retention. Right?
Yeah.
A lot of companies talk to me about how do we retain our staff. Just ask them. they will tell you.
Right. Yeah.
Right? We can get lost in creating these wonderful theories, having these very extravagant programs that are just detached from what your people are telling you. Right? You want to know whether your employees are engaged or not, ask them. If they're disengaged and you want to know why, just ask them. If you want to know what will keep them in the organization, just ask them.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So it all comes down to that connection with people. Now, I go back to what I said earlier on. We are wonderfully complex.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that makes this incredibly difficult because you might want something today and next week you don't want that anymore. You want something different,
else. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's important to stay engaged constantly, right? And there are ways to do that. Encouraging people to speak openly, creating safe environments for them to talk, not being fearful of the repercussions of sharing their opinion. These are really important things for organizations to focus on. And if they do that, and that flow of communication between your workforce and the decision makers, your leadership, if that is a very fluid flow of information, then organizations will create brilliant spaces for work where individuals flourish
Right.
and organizations flourish.
Flourish too.
It is possible. It isn't that one has to flourish and the other can't, or the other way around. It is possible for both to flourish, right? But it requires a few things. And,
Right.
and one of the few things is, you know, don't forget to stay human in all of this.
Right. Okay. I guess that brings me to my next question. Actually, speaking of
Almost like we planned it.
right, almost like we planned it. Yeah. But
We did
speaking of employee retention and connecting with people, you recently actually collaborated with Snapart Global on a series of knowledge forums and workshops here in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
So can you speak to me a little about how that experience was connecting with Sri Lankan audiences and what you might have picked up about the local culture?
Yeah, well, first of all, and maybe this is a right opportunity to say thank you to Snapart, right? Because they have been absolutely fantastic in organizing this week. It's run very, very smoothly. They've taken care of everything, including me.
Right.
So, you know, publicly, a very big thank you to Snapart. They're a superb organization. What have I learned about Sri Lankan culture in the short time that I've been here? Well, you know, let's first of all preface this with, you know, I've been here a very short period of time.
Of course.
So whatever I'm about to say is based on a few days of being here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And is in no way descriptive of Sri Lankan culture. It's just my experience. I think the common thing when you talk about Sri Lankan people around the world, the first thing everybody says is they're so lovely, right? And it's not true. No, I'm joking. They absolutely are.
Yeah.
So wonderful, right? They're
Yeah.
so wonderful. They're so hospitable. They're so welcoming. They're so open. They're so And so that reputation is very, very valid, and it's very obvious to see and to feel being a visitor to your beautiful country. What I found with the audiences that I've spoken to so far, again, very engaged, very receptive, very open-minded, right? Very open to asking what's going on in the rest of the world, right? What can we learn from the rest of the world? What can we share with the rest of the world? Because I don't think it's one-way traffic, right? There's a lot that organizations outside of Sri Lanka can learn from the way Sri Lankan companies are going about their business.
Yeah.
So I found audiences that are very open, very welcoming, very open-minded, very receptive to information, fun-loving, very engaging, right? We ran a session over the weekend, and they were fantastic. It was we asked this group to come in on a Saturday, right? They're giving up half their weekend to come and listen to me, somebody they don't know. They're probably wondering who the hell is this guy, right? And yet, they were there, open hearts, open minds, fully engaged. We spent, I think, 7 hours together on a Saturday, not a word of complaint, wonderful, wonderful. And the feedback was fantastic. And I think that's reflective of the groups that I've spoken to. At a professional, from a professional angle, if we talk about the HR community here, and this is, again, I want to re-emphasize this. I can only speak for my very limited experience of what I've seen over the last few days. This may not be true, right? But I'll share what I've seen.
Yeah.
I get a sense that the HR functions here are, first of all, incredibly capable, right? Highly passionate, very human driven, very human centric. So they understand what the H in HR means, right? But I get a feeling that they're stuck, right? That they feel like they want to do more, but they are held back somehow. Whether it is a capability or an empowerment issue, I don't know, right? I think it might be a little bit of both.
Maybe.
But I certainly get the sense that they feel like, I heard a lot of statements like, yeah, but we've always done it like this, or yeah, but people are reluctant to change here, or yeah, but that won't pass through leadership or senior management, or we won't be allowed to do those things.
Course, yeah.
Statements like that, which
very common.
Yeah, I think so. From, at least again, from my limited experience.
Yeah.
And that, the we have always done it this way is the most common statement for companies that eventually fail and die, right?
Right, yeah.
We've always done it this way.
Just very afraid, I feel like, of stepping out of that comfort zone that they've established for so long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I go back to, well, what's the fear of that?
Yeah.
Why is living outside of your comfort zone scary? Why is it not exciting? Right? Sure, it comes with challenge and risk and things which may scare us a little bit. But what we do with that fear, in inverted commas, for those who are just listening to this, what we do with fear determines the outcome, right? Fear can either cripple us or it can drive us. It can motivate us, right?
Right.
And living outside the comfort zone is where growth is. It's where evolution is. It's where innovation lives. It's where progress lives. It's where success lives, right? Success doesn't live within the comfort zone. Success lives outside. Change lives outside.
Outside the comfort zone.
Progress lives outside the comfort zone, right? So all of those organizations who are, and individuals who are afraid of change, I hear you. It's common, right? But don't let it stop you. There's I'd like to meet the first person who ever said change is hard, because
Right.
I'd kindly request them not to say that.
Not to say that, yeah.
Right? Because it's become a mantra all over the world. Change is hard.
Yeah.
Who said? Who said change is hard? What if we just changed our language, right? What if we just changed our thought process on this and said, change is exciting.
Yeah.
Change is wonderful. Change is inevitable, because it is.
It is. It
Right?
is. Yeah.
But because we preface it with change is hard,
Hard, but yeah.
we stop doing it.
Right.
We stop embracing it. We stop accelerating towards it. Because someone somewhere one day turned around and went, change is hard. Imagine if they hadn't. Imagine if our mantra today, instead of change is hard. Imagine if our mantra today was change is wonderful. Change is exciting. Change is progress. Change is success. Change is where the juice is. Right?
Right. Of course.
Imagine how different this world would be
Yeah.
if we embraced change instead of being fearful of it. Because the fact is, change is constant and it's inevitable.
Yeah.
Right?
It is.
So now we've labeled it as hard, we've made it hard. If we just change the label, we'll change the world.
Yeah. 100%. And do you feel like since it is this mindset has been established in such a vast kind of level, do you feel like, I mean, obviously the way to address it is to approach it at an individualistic human kind of level, because that's how you can kind of make change? Kind of, do you feel like the gears are kind of changing there? Do you feel like you're seeing it?
You know, every fiber in my body wants to say yes to you,
Right.
right? But I don't know. There's a part of me which thinks people are becoming more afraid. People are becoming more fearful of, I don't know what, ridicule, right?
Maybe.
Being unaccepted, being different, thinking differently, and whatever reason that's scary, I don't know. I don't know. I really want to say, yeah, I've seen it. You know,
Right, of
people
course,
are
yeah.
embracing change, but I don't know. I can't.
Maybe
talk
it
to
takes
any-
time, right?
Of course, it
For
takes
sure,
time.
yeah.
Of course, it takes time.
I mean, it takes a lot longer than maybe we would think we might see it.
who says?
Just guessing. Maybe it might take
Again,
a lot
right?
longer. Yeah.
That's another thing we say to ourselves is, change takes time,
Right.
right? And so we take our time.
Right.
What if we said change doesn't need to take time?
Yeah. Should like happen.
Change
like
can
yesterday.
happen.
Right.
Look, you can be in a brilliant mood in the morning, right? Somebody cuts you up on the way to work. That's it.
Yeah.
Your
That's
mood's
it.
done.
It's gone. Yeah.
That's how
Yeah.
fast change can happen.
Mm.
It can happen in an instant. It happens in an instant to us regularly, right? So again, we go back into these phrases and we accept them as truths without ever questioning them,
Of course.
right? Change takes time.
Right.
Well, evidence suggests that change can also happen in a fraction of a second.
Right.
Like I just said, your mood can
course.
change like this,
Yeah.
right? So there is evidence which suggests change doesn't need to take time, but yet we're almost married to these statements that, change takes time. Change is hard. It
Right.
takes time. Says who? What if we said something different? Would we start to behave differently? And if we started to behave differently, would the outcomes change our minds?
But speaking of being afraid of change, one thing that's inevitable now is the AI movement,
Oh, yes.
and that's something we're all, at least to a certain level, we're all invested in because it's happening right now.
No
Right,
choice.
we're living through it right now.
Yeah.
And this is something you did bring up in the knowledge forum that you kind of conducted in collaboration
Yep.
with SnapArc.
Yep.
And that is AI and HR.
Yes.
What do you think right now as it stands? What do you think the pros and cons are?
Well, look, there's an inevitability around this. I think everybody's accepted that, right?
Yeah.
And so, from my point of view, very little to gain from fighting this.
Yeah.
Better to embrace it and to leverage it. So, what are the pros? It's going to remove a lot of the administrative task of HR. It's going to automate a lot of HR tasks. And it'll also, most importantly, I think, it will, within the scope of how it's used, it will deliver an enhanced experience for the people, again, for the employees, right?
Of course.
So, an example. AI will very easily and already can create individual learning programs for staff.
Yeah.
Right? That's a good thing. That's a good thing, right? It takes away a huge administrative burden from AI, from HR. It provides a very good outcome for the employee who now has a learning program that is tailored for their needs, for their desires, for their wishes.
Yeah.
Right? These are good things. So there are many applications of AI where both parties, let's talk about HR, that's what we're talking about here, and the employees, your key stakeholders, plus the organization, all of the parties will win.
Right.
And it's easy to come up with many more examples, right? We talk about, let's say in recruitment, we talk about sourcing becoming automated, right? That's going to save recruiter time, and with the right interface with candidates, the candidates will also have a better experience, right? For example, if you as a candidate are looking for a new job, you're contacted by an AI, whether let's say it's a chatbot, but not the way chatbots are working now, but chatbots are going to become very sophisticated. It may even be a hologram that appears on your screen, and you can have a conversation with this AI, right? And ask any question you want. What's it like to work there? What's this manager like? What are employees saying about the things that you want to know as a candidate, right? Before you even apply, sometimes you might want to know, the question you're asking is, do I want to apply for this job? Okay?
Yeah.
You may have a few questions to ask and get answers to before you apply for the job. AI is going to give you that opportunity, right? Before I apply, I want to know a few things. Is there flexible working arrangements? What is the manager like? What's the culture like?
Right.
You know, how ambitious are they? What is the leadership like? What's the office look like? Show me a quick video of what the office looks like. Right? Simple things. Okay, I've got my questions answered. Now I'll apply.
Right.
Candidate experience better? Recruiter experience better? Organization will have applications from people who genuinely want to work there.
Right.
Everybody wins. Right? So in these sorts of situations, AI is great. And I encourage HR organizations around the world to embrace this, not fight it, because it's coming.
Yeah, it's coming, for sure.
The cons.
Yes.
We talked about change and how change, largely people are fearful of change.
Yeah.
Right? I think AI is potentially one of the scariest things for a lot of people around the world right now.
Absolutely.
I think the most common question people are wondering is, will it take my job?
Yeah.
Right? And I think HR people are asking this a lot, because I think it's widely recognized that HR is one of the functions that will be affected the most with AI, right? Or at least one of the first to be affected.
Right.
If you read the studies, if you talk to people who work in HR, what they'll say to you is, AI will take away the administrative tasks so we can keep the human touch. Right? Great. We talked about how the human component is. Maybe this is a real opportunity, and I see it like this. It's a real opportunity for HR to reinvent itself, right? You could argue that HR around the world, and this isn't applicable to all HR functions, but in many organizations, HR is seen as an administrative function, a bureaucratic function, right?
Yeah.
This is an opportunity for HR to shed that label, right? Let AI and technology do those tasks that are administrative and bureaucratic. And then that will free up the professionals within the function to really provide that elevated individual human touch to employees.
Right.
So for me, the con, that fear of the change that's coming, is an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity to elevate the function. It's an opportunity to deliver the type of service to employees that HR, I think the HR professionals that I speak to, they all want to do this,
Right.
But they're burdened with a lot of the administrative tasks that are involved in HR. And there are administrative tasks. This is an opportunity for HR to change that,
Yeah.
right? So embrace AI, learn how to use it, explore what it can do, take away the things that can be automated and can deliver a better employee experience,
Right.
and then reinvent yourselves, reinvent the function so that it provides the service that I think most HR people want to provide to their employees.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So
yeah.
the con, the fear of change, again, we go back to it's coming. It doesn't have to be scary. It can be an opportunity. Look at it as such, and
I don't think it'll be that scary if you do embrace it.
It
right?
won't be scary if you embrace
Embrace
it.
it, yeah.
It'll be scary if you hide away from it.
For sure.
if you let it happen to you rather than acknowledge the inevitability of this and take charge of it.
Right.
Then it won't be scary. As the technology proliferates, it will democratize
Of course.
artificial intelligence, right?
Right.
Which means more and more people will have access to it. And
Yeah.
when you have more and more access to something that is so incredibly powerful,
Yeah.
for me, that's an opportunity to level the playing fields.
Yes, it does.
Right?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
So I understand why people are fearful of AI, right? It's a huge unknown.
Yeah.
It's developing at a pace which is unprecedented. We've
Mm.
never seen anything like it. It will be magnitudes smarter than human beings within the next couple of years,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Even the people developing it are not entirely clear on where this is going, right? So
They
Of
don't
course.
know what they've created, but
No.
it's here now.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the rate of at which it's continuing to create, and there are some significant questions which haven't been answered. There is all of that. That's reality without a doubt.
Yeah.
But there's also a huge opportunity with this, you know.
Absolutely.
And when I talk to HR teams around the world, most are using AI in some way.
Mm.
I think there is still a long way to go before the true value of AI is captured within HR broadly. I know there are, again, pockets of brilliance around the world,
Yeah.
but I think there's still huge opportunity. And, you know, it's almost like every week you hear of a new AI-based HR platform being
Right.
created or developed
course.
somewhere. So it's very difficult to keep up with all of this as well. And I think that's another thing that organizations are struggling with. What's the latest? You know,
Where do I begin?
do I invest here, and how soon before that's obsolete?
Right. Of
So-
course. Of course.
And
Yeah.
I think that's stopping a lot of people from making a move, which is understandable, right? If it's obsolete within a month, 3 months, then
Yeah.
that investment is. So many organizations are taking the wait and see approach,
Mm.
which
I mean,
understandable as well.
understandable.
Understandable. Yeah, but huge opportunity and huge opportunity to utilize AI in pockets, right?
Mm.
Without huge investment. Utilize it in pockets. Try it in sourcing. Try it in, the development of your job descriptions was one of the things a lady said the other day at one of the forums. You know, she's using it to create job descriptions.
Right.
Try it in pockets. You know, see how it feels. Expand it. Yeah, it's coming.
Yeah.
You might as well get familiar with it.
Absolutely. I do want to get into a question that's of personal interest to me. And I really wanted to get an idea of it from an HR perspective. And that is the pandemic's fundamentally changed traditional employment structures, work cultures, and things like that. And I'm talking specifically about the work from home phenomenon.
Yeah.
Which I think the pandemic expedited. It wasn't something that the pandemic created, right? But depending on who you talk to, it's either like the best thing since like sliced bread, or it's like the worst thing ever. It's destroying, whatever. But what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I think you've just answered your question, right? Depends on who you talk to.
Right.
And what does that tell us? That tells us that it's personal.
Mm.
You might think it's the worst thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
I might think it's the best thing.
The best thing.
What that tells us is people have different needs.
Right. Of course.
Right.
Yeah.
For some people, they enjoy working from home. It allows them to manage the other things in their
Lives. Yeah.
in a very, very
Efficient.
doable, less expensive, comfortable way, right? Taking kids to school, picking up kids from school, looking after parents, paying the bills,
Yeah.
right? Going to the bank, doing the groceries, all real life things,
Yeah.
right? And I know a lot of people who find that they can focus better at home because they can lock themselves away, they're undisturbed, those coffee chats are not there, those taps on the shoulder are not there, which we're all accustomed to in the workplace.
Useless meetings and
Well,
could have been an
I don't
email.
want to say useless meetings, but yes, useless
Right.
meetings.
Yeah.
So a lot of people prefer that,
Right.
but then there are people who don't prefer that. There are
Right.
people who like to come into the office. They like the coffee conversations. They like the taps on the shoulders. They like the useless meetings.
Yeah.
They want to be around their colleagues. They want to differentiate between home and work,
Yeah.
life and work, right?
Yep.
did we need work from home policies to understand that people have different preferences, or could we not just accept that as a given, right?
As a given, yeah.
I think the mistake that a lot of companies made is that they tried to apply a policy to
A one shoe fits
broad,
all,
a
yeah.
one size fits all. And
Yeah.
how many times do we have to realize that one size doesn't fit all?
Doesn't, yeah.
Right? So again, sort of thinking about what I've seen some of the best organizations doing, they offer the flexibility.
Flexibility, right? Yeah.
You know, I'm a big believer in, if you hire adults, treat them like adults.
Yeah.
Right? So do you want to work from home tomorrow? Great. I trust you to make that decision.
Yeah.
Right? Ultimately, and here's where I'm perhaps a bit of a purist. Ultimately, and this is what applies for the people who work within Melius, it doesn't matter where you work from. I don't care, right? The only thing that matters is, are we delivering what we promised to our customers, and are we fulfilling what we promised to our employees, right? And if those things are taken care of, it doesn't matter to me if you're wearing a pair of shorts sitting on a beach and doing your work from there, because that's what you want in your life today. Great, good luck to you.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter to me if you're working 9 to 5, right? As long as you're getting the job done that you're supposed to be getting done.
Yeah.
Why should it matter at what time of the day you do it? Now, there are jobs which require you to be in an office or in a factory or at a surgery or in a hospital or in a shop, right? Great.
Yeah.
People who are in those jobs surely realize that working from home isn't an option for them.
Yeah.
So I had the question the other day, right? There was a gentleman, an HR leader from a textile business, and he said, we need people in the factory, so we can't offer them work from home. Okay, great.
Yeah.
But then offer them something different.
Something different, yeah.
Because there are other people in the organization who will have that benefit. And what you don't want is the factory workers thinking that they are at a disadvantage or disserved by the company, whereas those others have some sort of advantage or privilege. So they recognize they've got to come to the factory, but offer them something else.
Right.
Right? Again, as employees, it's not we want one thing, right? We want a bucket of things from our employees, right?
Right.
Some are more important than others. If I can't give you work from home, what can I give you that will make you feel like you are as valued an employee as the people who do get work from home?
Right.
Right?
Right.
So again, it's not one size fits all. It never has been, it never will be.
Right.
Right?
Right.
We now have the technology to make these individually developed programs very doable. And hopefully with all of this extra capacity that HR folk will have, they will now be able to understand at an individual level, what do you need, so we can develop the programs you need to make you engaged and satisfied and fulfilled at work.
Right.
So that on Sunday night, you're not sitting there with dread thinking, God, it's Monday. Instead, you're sitting there with hope and excitement and enthusiasm, thinking, I can't wait to wake up tomorrow so that I can either go to work or stay at home and do something that's meaningful and important. And I can also take my kids to school in the morning or spend an hour with them before they go to school without that affecting my work.
Right. I saw this LinkedIn post actually last night about it's not what your company has to say about it on its website. It's about how you feel on Sunday night. And I was like, all right, well, there you go. Yeah.
Of course it is. Right. One of the areas where organizations have, I think, overlooked largely by implementing these work from home policies is that they haven't taught their managers how to manage teams that are dispersed.
Right.
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 So what happened in many companies around the world is that they implemented a work from home policy. Now you had managers who had part of their team working from home, part of their team in the office.
Yeah.
How do you manage that situation? They had never been taught.
Right.
They had never been in this situation.
Of course.
And suddenly they were overlooked, right? Nobody had taken a moment to think, hold on, we want to offer this for our employees. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
But let's not forget the people who are tasked with managing these now dispersed teams, who have never been in these situations before, who don't have the skills or the capabilities intrinsically to deal with this situation. It's something new.
Yeah.
And very often companies overlooked that, right? So for those companies out there who are thinking about doing this or who have put these policies in place, I would suggest to them, don't forget those managers.
Right.
Because these disparate teams are now creating a source of stress for their managers, right? They don't know, how do you manage equally somebody who's sitting at home who I see maybe once a month and somebody I see every day in the office? How do you not build a stronger relationship with that person and maybe start to favor them for a new project that comes up?
Right.
Worst case scenario, a promotion that comes up, right? How do you ensure balance within your team when you have a very different setup? And I think that's something which organizations should not overlook as well.
Yeah, that's very true. It's again, very important food for thought. Like all of this stuff, like, it's making me like ponder on things, fantastic stuff.
I ponder it all the time, so I'm happy to share.
Right. Yeah. But that brings us to the end of the episode. But to wrap everything up, let's say someone's looking up to you and aspires to do what you do now.
Right.
With all of the pros and cons it comes along with.
Yeah.
What words of advice do you have for someone like that?
So, two things I would say immediately. First of all, never look up to anyone. Right? We're all equal.
Right.
Secondly, I don't do advice. I'm happy to share my opinion, but I don't do advice. What I would encourage people to do is to think freely, right? To gather opinion from everyone, right? Be like a sponge, gather opinion, but then make your own decisions, right? If something doesn't look right, feel right, sound like, even if the whole world is doing it, don't be afraid to say, hey, that doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And put your point forward, right? But don't just follow because everybody else is following, right? We've been blessed with minds, right? I'd encourage people to use them, right? That doesn't mean isolate yourself and think you know it all. No, absolutely not. Also, remember that we never know it all. That knowledge is a prison, right? That you've got to keep learning. You've got to stay open-minded. We're seeing more change now than we've seen in decades. And it's going to accelerate with AI, right? We all need to keep learning. So the only thing I would advise, no, not advise, my opinion is, think for yourselves. Think for yourselves. Take the opinion, learn from everybody, but use that data to form your own conclusions.
Right.
And then test it. Test it. A lot of the times, the stuff that I say people find quite controversial, right? But then I explain the logic behind my opinion, and sometimes people start to go, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what I would encourage people to do. Think critically, think smart, take opinion, but don't confuse opinion with fact.
Right.
That's something else.
That's very important.
Yeah, don't confuse opinion with fact.
Right. All right. Well, there you go. That was wonderful. That was
Everyone
fantastic.
looks like they're pondering along.
Yeah, they're like, oh crap, okay.
Oh dear.
But
we're not inviting him again.
But thank you so much, Taz, for taking the time. I know you're busy. You're here for a very limited time.
Sadly.
Yes. But hey, there's always next time. And now you know some people here, so you know who to call. And we'll show you a good time.
Thank you for having me. It was enjoyable. I hope interesting for your listeners.
Definitely.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation.
Awesome. Well, there you have it. And that's it for this episode of The Learning Curve by Snap Global. And thanks once again to our wonderful location partner, Liquid Spaces at One Golf is Tower. Stay tuned for the next, and make sure you catch us on our socials and all of the other episodes on all major podcasting platforms. And I'll catch you on the next one.